What immediately came to mind in terms of how you wanted the film to look and feel visually?
When I first read the script, there were definitely a lot of, images that came to mind. And it's always one of those things where I want to, hear from the director and kind of see what direction they want to go. And so it was like a lot of conversations with our director, Justin Tipping, who brought a bunch of his own references that led it into this really exciting direction. But then Justin was always super open to like, other ideas and, that I was able to bring ideas about color and things like that. And it was a very collaborative process, and also with our, production designer Jordan Ferrer and our costume designer Dominique Dawson. Like we were really able to create this world that was very, basically like visually telling the same story, very cohesive, which is for me like always exciting.
Now, the film blends sports with horror and psychological elements. How did you manage to balance all of that through your cinematography?
Yeah, like there's definitely this very specific visual storytelling for sports, and then also definitely a very specific one for like the psychological horror. But we wanted to almost like, have the audience first tap into it and be like, okay, yes, I feel the sports of it. Like, there's these very fluid camera movements, there's handheld, there's like fun flares and all this stuff. But then once we start kind of going into Cam's descent, I really wanted it to feel as though like the suddenly the camera style became a lot more rigid, like more locked off. There's a lot of very symmetrical, center punched compositions, and almost a feeling like he's trapped in this world, which he very, kind of literally and figuratively is trapped. And so really kind of showing that in a way that I feel like there was a fun contrast between the two. Also in the beginning, like, the sports end of it, the lighting was a lot more neutral. And then once we kind of get into more and more time at the compound, it becomes like a lot more colors and color mixing, and yeah, just kind of like to try to, r ramp up a little bit of those visuals too.
Some of the visuals showcase the perspective of keeping us inside of the main character's head. Can you talk a little bit about what you used or what specific techniques you used to approach this?
We used a lot of different tools. Like for example, we had this one shot that we kind of the first time that it's used is in the doctor's office after he's received like the blow to his head, and it's like this angle that we use like almost top down. It's this idea that it's almost like from the perspective of his injury. So we really wanted to play with the, whenever Cam is kind of questioning something, or like there's something that's like come up, we don't know if it's like, is it really from him or is it from this like trauma of the injury? So it was like this high angle shot. We also ended up doing, it's like for a lot of the football stuff, we did a lot of body cam work where we would mount the camera to Tyreek and have him run. We also had this like helmet rig where we, rigged a football helmet around the face of the camera so it could literally be Cam's POV throughout a lot of those sequences. When we were in the party at the party at the Savior's compound and all that stuff, we ended up using this lens. We got all of our lenses from Panavision, and they were these beautiful lenses that were, designed by Dan Sasaki. And there's this one that's like this 50 millimeter lens that Justin started calling the ghost, because it's like this portrait lens. But what happens is like the center of the lens, everything would be in focus, but quickly on the sides, everything starts smearing and the world kind of becomes distorted in a way. So we use that lens a lot in that party scene just to kind of show Cam suddenly, after he takes that drink, starting to question like what his realities were. So we were really able to use a lot of different tools to and so many others I can't think of right now. Oh, the fleur, like when we use the fleur to kind of show what was happening just under the layers of the to the body when, when it's hit so violently. So we tried to, work with as many tools as we could visually to kind of show all those things.
Now, I read somewhere that you use thermal cameras, military grade thermal cameras for specific scenes within him. Can you talk a little bit about your choice and reasoning for using these cameras? I thought that those scenes were absolutely stunning.
Yeah, so that's the FLIR camera, and we chose those because, in early in prep, Justin was, had showed me this music video that they had used the FLIR on, and then I also had just seen Zone of Interest, which is a gorgeous movie, and they have these whole sequences that take place at night with the FLIR camera, and the FLIR kind of like so basically what it does is it reads the thermal signature of everything around you, right? And then for humans, like, it kind of you can kind of see where you're warmer, where you're colder. Like it's kind of like it kind of creates this really sort of haunting negative negative for what the human face ends up looking like. And so we wanted to be able to really show the level of like when these hits come, like what happens to the body itself. And the FLIR just kind of felt like this weird sort of like X-ray or MRI, image. And so what we did was we rigged that camera above our camera so that the our editor Taylor Mason could immediately cut from like, our Alexa footage to the same frame of FLIR. And so it's like this kind of jarring cut for the audience. And then you can, really play with what's happening like in the body. And it was just like a really fun, I think that, we get into these, with all these different contact sports, you get so used to watching it and you get so used to, watching people get either thrown down or punched or any of these things if it's boxing or whatever. But we never really kind of see what happens below the surface of that. And I think the FLIR was just a great way for us to be able to do that.
And finally, was there a particular scene in him that challenged you where you had to experiment in order to find the right visual approach?
Yeah, I feel like there were so many challenging scenes as far as, but only because we were doing so many things outside of the box. Whether it was like, building a rig to have the football, that mean building a rig to have the camera going like, 30 to 40 miles an hour. We built this whole rig that we ended up calling like the boomerang rig. A lot of the body cam stuff. Yeah, I think the FLIR, probably anytime we were working with the FLIR, that was like one of the most challenging parts of it, only because it's not a camera that's made for filmmaking, so we had to do so much to the camera to make it work within our parameters. So that was something, and it's also like a huge group effort between the camera department and the VFX to be able to handle that footage too. And our final colorist Tom Poole, who did a beautiful job with it also. So yeah, I'd say anytime that the FLIR came out, that was a big technical challenge.